Let's get more on US President Donald Trump making steel and aluminium his latest tariff targets. London School of Economics Associate Professor Thomas Sampson joins us from London. Now, Thomas, do we have any more details yet on the tariffs Donald Trump is planning to tell us more about tomorrow, apart from the fact that they will likely be on steel and aluminium imports into the US?
So far is that he's planning to put a 25% tariff on steel and aluminium imports from all countries everywhere in the world. I guess what we still don't know is whether those tariffs will actually end up being imposed. We've already seen with the Canada and Mexico tariff last week that there was a threat, but then they were never actually implemented. So we still have to wait to see what will happen over the next few days.
Yes, it's all a bit uncertain, isn't it? If they do come into effect, when will that likely be, and which countries will be the most impacted?
You say there's a lot of uncertainty. President Trump has indicated that the tariffs will come into effect quite soon, but there isn't a date that's been given yet. And the idea at the moment is that all countries will be hit. Now, the biggest exporters of steel and aluminium to the US are Canada, China, and Mexico. So those countries would be most exposed. But inevitably, what we're going to see is countries trying to lobby the US president to get an exemption from those tariffs, just as Australia did during his first term. So there's going to be some frantic diplomatic activity going on over the next few days to try and get out of the tariffs.
Well, presumably, such tariffs take a lot of organising and planning to be implemented. They can't just happen overnight, can they?
In practice, they could. If the US issues the order that these tariffs now happen, then the US kind of Customs and Border Patrol will start to collect the tariffs on imports. I think it's more likely that we'll be talking, maybe about a week or so before they actually come into effect. But with President Trump, you never really know.
Of course, we don't. So a lot of companies are waiting in anticipation on how it could possibly impact them. How significant would a move by the Trump administration be?
Well, inevitably, it is going to raise the cost of importing steel and aluminium into the US. During Trump's first term, what we saw was the effect of the import tariffs was it raised prices for US consumers and US users of steel and aluminium in this case. So for importers, 25% is a fairly large tariff, and you would expect to see fairly significant drops in exports to the US if these tariffs do go ahead.
And as we've mentioned, countries, of course, can come to individual arrangements with the US. Australia, for example, it managed to secure exemptions on both sectors during Mr. Trump's first term. Do you think this second term, though, will be any different?
Well, we've seen that Canada and Mexico managed to get the proposed tariffs on them delayed by negotiating with President Trump. And we know Trump does like to negotiate. He sees tariffs as a bargaining chip that he links to other foreign policy negotiations. So right now, I think what Australia's diplomatic corps needs to be doing is working out, using their contacts, what exactly could they offer the US that might be sufficient for President Trump to give Australia an exemption on these tariffs. There's definitely scope to negotiate.
Meanwhile, China's retaliatory tariffs on some US exports take effect today. Who will this move hurt the most? So
China has tried to target these retaliatory tariffs to cause pain to US producers. So, for example, there are new tariffs on LNG, which will hurt US LNG exporters. But we shouldn't overlook that it will also hurt Chinese consumers, because at the same time as reducing opportunities for US exporters, it's increasing the price of these goods imported into China. And fundamentally, this kind of trade war that we're now seeing the US and China enter into, it's a lose-lose proposition for both sides. When both sides end up putting on tariffs, everyone ends up worse off.
Yeah. In your view, are these just reactionary and probably temporary measures until the leaders of the two countries get a chance to talk and negotiate, as you say, Trump likes to do? Or do you think these changes are definite, here to stay while Donald Trump is in power?
I think both those possibilities could occur. We saw previously that sometimes Trump would temporarily put tariffs on and then offer countries exemptions. But at the same time, the tariffs he imposed on China during his first administration they're still in place. Even the Biden administration didn't take those tariffs away. So it could be that the changes that are being made today are here for the longer term. It's just we don't know immediately. There's a huge amount of uncertainty around all of this at the moment.
The markets aren't liking it very much either. Do you think, well, I guess we don't know, will it get worse likely? At what point would you consider this a trade war?
I think we're in a trade war. The US has imposed tariffs. China has responded. The US and China are in a trade war. Now, so far, the US is not in a trade war with any other countries, but we're clearly at the point that if we carry on down this path, we could be entering a global trade war. And for relatively small, quite open economies such as Australia, which rely and historically have benefited from the rules-based trading system, this is a grave cause for concern. The kind of system that we've relied on to promote global trade since the end of the Cold War, it's now really under threat with these measures President Trump is taking.
Associate Professor Thomas Sampson, really good to get your views. Thank you.
Thank you.